All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is our 17th Creator Workflows and Platform Academy. I'm so glad all of you joined us. I am super happy to have Ashley Snyder with us today. I hope most of you have been in our last session 2 weeks ago with Amanda Jocelyn, who presented us everything that is new about the next experience in the San Diego release. Today, we'll talk about how to activate Next Experience. So that's very exciting. Those of you who haven't seen the last session yet, please be sure to go to the Now community or to YouTube and check out the recording. I'll also post the link here in the chat. So be sure to check that out if you haven't yet. And that's about all I have as intros, except for small introductions. My name is Lisa Hohenstein. As I mentioned earlier, I live in Europe, that is precisely in Germany. I've been with ServiceNow for about 3 years now. I joined as a solution consultant. I'm now in the outbound product management for Creator Workflows, soon to be platform with Adam Stout, and Ashley in our sister team. So that's exciting. And I worked with a customer before. I was a platform owner for ServiceNow for about 3 years before that. And I'm very excited to have Ashley here today.
Almost tonight for you, today for me. So I'm Ashley Snyder. I'm an outbound product manager based in the US out of North Carolina for the platform web UX team. I've been with ServiceNow for 3 months, so not as long as Lisa, but I have been working as a customer and a platform or partner for the last 6 years or so. It's been so long now, mainly in higher education and healthcare. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about all the features we have in Next Experience UI and how to activate it.
So when you joined the ServiceNow space, was that before or with the service portal? Did you start with CMS?
It was right when CMS was cutting over to service portal. So like right when Fuji hit, we were cutting over UI 15 to UI 16. Wow. We built a CMS and then the service portal launched. So we were kind of behind there. We had our CMS all ready to go and then started looking at portal.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, the journey goes on. We're now looking at the next experience. So let's get started with that.
All right, yeah. So we'll go ahead and jump in. I want to thank everyone for joining today's session. Like I mentioned, I'm Ashley Snyder. I'm the outbound product manager for the web UX team, mainly focusing on our next experience capabilities. What that is like our Next Experience UI framework. It's UI Builder, custom components, and now we've thrown another one in with San Diego, which is the Next Experience UI. I do want to make this session interactive, so as I go through, feel free to ask questions or post them in the Q&A, and I'll try to answer them during the session. If we don't get to them during the session, I think we'll have some time at the end as well. At least I think we're going to go ahead and start off with a poll. You want to go ahead and pop that up?
Sure.
And basically this poll, we're just gauging where everyone is at, on activating the Next Experience UI at the moment. Like, as far as if you're ready to activate it, if you got the information you need, or you still have questions about it, hopefully we'll answer them in this session, or you just don't even know what Next Experience UI is. That's just what this poll is trying to gather.
The cool thing is about the whole experience is that it extends way beyond just the regular interface. It also affects stuff like the playbooks. The past days, I've been dabbling with creating custom activity UIs for my playbooks, and that is also done in UI Builder. So that's very exciting. Like it's everywhere now.
I think you're doing a CreatorCon on that, right? With the playbook activities that you're doing.
Yeah. Be sure to sign up for knowledge. So we're at 16 out of 22. Want me to close the poll? Right. So most people have seen and thought about Next Experience. We have 44% say they already have a plan to activate. 19% they need more info. 31% are unsure, and 1% does not know what it is.
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like we have a really great distribution of folks who are ready to go, but we do have some folks that need more information or just unsure. And also we do have some information in the session today on Next Experience UI for the folks who don't know what it is yet. So that's great that we have those answers across the board.
Awesome.
So jumping into that, so yeah, our agenda, it's pretty short today. Really what we're going to do is just kind of demystify what the Next Experience UI is, and then also the process of activating it after you upgrade to San Diego. So I'll just do a short intro on the Next Experience UI. As Lisa mentioned earlier, we did have some previous Academy sessions that do deep dives on this topic, and also what's new in San Diego. So I won't go into it too much, but I did want to cover it for attendees who just haven't had the chance to watch those yet. Then we'll get into activation considerations and best practices for the Next Experience UI. I'll also touch on our Center of Excellence site that we've just spun up. And then at the end, we'll hop into a short demo where I basically just upgraded a Roam instance. And this will be like the first time I log into it. And we'll walk through what the process is on activating Next Experience UI in that Roam or in that San Diego instance upgraded from Roam. All right, perfect. So before I jump into Next Experience UI, I do want to cover some user interface terminology because I'm going to be discussing these terms throughout the session. I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. We have some new terms out there. You're going to see these in documentation and webinars. So I did want to get started with this. So first up, we have the core UI, which basically we're all familiar with what we've called the platform UI. Some refer to it as the classic UI. Which is mainly built on Jelly, Forms, and Lists. So if you've gone into UI 16, that's kind of what I'm talking about. You can use all those terms interchangeably: core UI, platform UI, UI 16, classic UI, however you want to use it. But we've rebranded it to core UI just to kind of differentiate between the platform UI and the Next Experience UI, and then also our workspace interfaces. So when you hear me say core UI, just think platform UI. This has been a really powerful interface. We've been using it for years. It does get a lot done, but it is more of a one-size-fits-all approach. And it really didn't, cater to multiple personas using it very well. I know you can use like views and, UI policies. Really just didn't have that flexibility with this interface. We do have two versions of workspaces at this time. So we have the Agent Workspace, which was launched around the London-Madrid timeframe. Agent Workspace was launched to really provide that streamlined new multitasking interface for Tier 1 and Tier 2 agents. I mean, it was a really good start for us, but we got some feedback around that time that it just wasn't very configurable. So with that feedback in mind, we began launching what we call configurable workspaces around the Quebec timeframe. And the first one that we had was for customer service management. And those configurable workspaces, they build off that Agent Workspace kind of interface and that look and feel, but they really allow customers to go in and configure and customize that interface to their needs. And we launched a new UI builder tool alongside of configurable workspaces. And we've also have about 130 out-of-the-box components that you can use in UI builder for those configurable workspaces. And I do want to mention, as of San Diego, most products now have their own configurable workspace. So prior to San Diego, we just had CSM. After San Diego, we have the new service operations workspace for ITSM. HR has launched theirs. I believe we have project workspace. There's a bunch that I'm finding out about and putting in our COE documentation. So check there if you have a question about a product line workspace. And then now that we have customers who are beginning to look into configurable workspaces and migrate over to configurable workspaces, there's still going to be, just functionalities in those workspaces that aren't covered yet. We are, building them, and they are for the Tier 1, Tier 2, or basically process users. But we do know as we're building these workspaces, there's just some use cases that we haven't built yet or we haven't covered yet. A really good example that I heard of the other day was if you're working in a service operations workspace for ITSM, you can do those Tier 1 and 2 agent duties, but you still have to hop back into the core UI to, basically do the product or the problem lifecycle, because we just haven't built that into that workspace yet. We don't want to deter users from using the workspace just because they have to hop back in to do this one thing. So with the Next Experience UI, you have the ability to go back and forth between the core UI and the configurable workspace that you're working in, without having to open new browser tabs. Basically, everything's underneath the same header, and you can switch back and forth. You can do what you need to do in a workspace. If you have, that problem lifecycle or whatever kind of process that just hasn't been migrated into a workspace yet, or any other things that you need that core UI interface for, you can switch back and forth easily. So now I will cover just our roadmap at a high level, because I do want to kind of discuss where we're at and what we're looking at as we go into our future releases. So we are currently on San Diego. In this release, we launched the Next Experience UI, and like I mentioned, most products have their own configurable workspaces. And in this release, we're really focused on that tier 1 and 2 agents, and like different process user experiences. And then in Tokyo, we are still continuing to work on the agent experience with those workspaces, putting more functionality in there. And then we're also continuing to phase 2 of our Now Experience design refresh. We do know we have some things as far as the platform UI or the core UI and other elements that we still have to continue with the refresh on. And then also the UI Builder tool is slated to receive some enhancements, such as building pages and binding data to components will get a lot easier in this release, just because we know customers will be working in UI Builder more as they adopt Next Experience and configurable workspaces. And then I do want to mention, after Tokyo, we're going to start focusing on creator and admin experiences. And at this time, we'll have more information on the direction and communication regarding portals. So, stay tuned for that, but it won't be coming until after Tokyo.
One question that I hear a lot about timeline and forward-looking things around Next Experience is also ATF. And the latest info that I have is that our teams are working very hard to make ATF also cover UI Builder pages. So anything that is in, say, core UI or forms and lists can still be tested with ATF test steps. But once you get into those configured UI Builder pages, those are currently not covered, but we're working very hard to get that into our ATF functionality.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I will cover that later. I think it has been, there has been some confusion around ATF and what it can and cannot test out there in the community. So I'm glad you brought that point up. So I'll jump into those later as far as like functionalities, but I do want to give that quick overview of the Next Experience UI for attendees just haven't seen it or need a refresh and want more information on what it is. And then we'll move into those activation procedures. So basically, as I mentioned previously, Next Experience UI is our new user interface that provides an updated design, to the core UI versus UI 16. It also allows users to navigate back and forth between the core UI and workspace experiences without having to open and work in multiple browser tabs. And we've built this interface upon the same Next Experience UI framework that we've built our workspaces on. So all of it uses the same technology. You're going to see our workspace products use the same technologies as the Next Experience UI. If you're building your own workspaces or experiences, everything uses that same Next Experience UI framework. You'll use the same UI Builder tool to configure it. So I did want to, just point that out, that you do have those capabilities when using Next Experience UI. And this is really important when you're actually designing your own landing pages. So landing pages, really, what does this mean? What does it mean that I can configure Next Experience UI in UI Builder? Well, what this means is you can actually go in and create landing pages in UI Builder that has targeted content specific to different personas. So whether you have like an agent or a manager, you can have a different landing page based upon what that user needs to see. Like a manager is going to need to see different things versus an agent. And you can build those pages all within UI Builder to show that targeted content. And then this also gives those users the flexibility, like I mentioned, to hop back and forth between the workspace and the core UI, all within that one interface. So what allows users to hop back and forth? That's what we call unified navigation. You're going to see this word in our product documentation and our articles out there. So unified navigation is just this header component that we have at the top up here. It basically wraps your landing pages, it wraps your workspaces, all within the same interface. And we've done a few things to this. So we've decoupled the application navigator menus that used to be on the UI 16 sidebar. And we have placed them at the top as translucent overlays, as you can see in this little video playing, just to free up screen real estate. Users can still pin these to the sidebar if they wish, if they're used to working in that kind of layout. And then we've also added a workspaces menu at the top for users to switch back and forth between the workspaces and the core UI. And a couple other things to mention up here is the contextual navigation pill right there in the middle. That shows you where you're at in the core UI, and you can actually quickly favorite from here, which just makes it really easy to favorite a page that you're on. And then as far as search capabilities, we've combined these. We've combined search for global search, and if you have search set up in a workspace, all within the same search box. Previously, you would search per interface. So if you were in a workspace tab, you would search in your workspace. If you were in the platform UI, you would search within that tab. And we've combined it to where you can just click a drop down and basically choose where you want to search from. So that's another thing that we've done with the unified navigation. So our end user preferences panel has received some updates as well. The users can choose display settings such as compact mode. They can switch back and forth between the different themes and variants that we have out there. We've combined notification and application settings into one panel. So basically, if you are working in a workspace, you'll see options for your workspace settings. If you're in the core UI, you'll see options for your core UI settings. So everything's really been combined within that one end user preferences panel. So the landing page, like I mentioned, these are pages configured in UI Builder. You can target them to different personas or audiences, and they contain the information that the user needs to start their day, whether they are an agent, a manager, or another persona. So these pages, they take advantage of all of the options that you have in UI Builder. So you can drop those components on there, configure them as you need. You can take advantage of performance analytics components, list components, and you can put approvals on there, really whatever you need for that persona to work and start their day. And then you can also have different versions of a page called a variant. And that's really what targets those different audiences, right? I can have a variant for a manager versus a variant for an agent, but it's all at the same URL path. I don't have to configure multiple URLs for these different personas to go to. They just log in. It does all the conditions and role checking behind the scene and basically shows the page that the user needs based upon their roles.
We have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
Maybe we want to dive into some of those. We have one from Susanna Huston who asks, will UI 16 be eventually deprecated or no longer supported?
We don't have anything on the roadmap right now about UI 16 being deprecated. There's no speak of it. We know that customers are still going to use it. We have some features that Next Experience doesn't support, which I'll get to shortly, that we still need UI 16 for. So if you prefer to work on UI 16, if your users prefer to work on UI 16, you don't have to worry right now. We have no plans on that.
Also, going from past experience, we very rarely turn something completely off. Most of the time, we will stop developing for the previous technology, but usually people have enough and ample time to migrate. Yeah. There's another one about deactivating the top navigation menus with a property. How do you navigate to the filter navigator if the Polaris menus are disabled?
That's a good question. I haven't tried that out yet as far as disabling the menus themselves. So let me circle back around to that one at the end. Maybe we can check it out in the demo. I'm not really sure. We might have to get back to that one, Lisa.
All right. Any plans to add notifications, turning on and off individual ones for the new preference pane?
That may be on the roadmap. I haven't heard of that yet, but I will definitely check in on that and add some information about it to our COE if we have it on the roadmap or the abilities there to do it in San Diego, and we just haven't put it in product docs yet.
Right. And then Eric finally asks, is there a way to let users set up or modify their own landing pages the way they could with dashboards?
Right now, landing pages are, the configuration and creation are locked down to that UI Builder, those roles that you can use to create pages in UI Builder. I think it's UI Builder admin. So right now, users cannot create their own landing pages.
Thank you. That's all for now.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I'll get to this quickly because I do want to get into activation. We also do have enhanced styling for core UI lists and forms. So you'll see some more styling on the list. We've updated field styles on the list. We've moved a few things around as far as like the contextual actions menu, personalized list column, and like list UI actions. You'll see them on the top right now. That kind of just groups them all together for actions that a user can take on a list. And if you're on a form, you'll see a new process flow formatter enhancements that we've enhanced the styling on, as well as distinct tabs within the form. So if you're using tab forms, it's real easy to see what tab you're on. Like if you're on notes or resolution information, we've kind of really tried to make that stand out and pop. As I think I mentioned, dark theme is not available yet for core UI lists and forms, but it is on the roadmap. We know folks want that, but if you're in San Diego, you're still going to see that light mode when you're working in these. Right, so now that we have an overview of Next Experience UI, I do want to jump into activation considerations and best practices. So what are the additional prerequisites needed to activate Next Experience UI? Well, I'm going to say none. You don't need another plugin. You don't need to go to the store or purchase any additional capabilities to activate it. All the plugins necessary come through with the San Diego upgrade. Really, all you have to do is switch a system property from false to true. I do want to mention that configurable workspaces, they're not a prerequisite to activation. You don't have to have one to turn on Next Experience UI. We do encourage customers to begin looking at them for their tier 1, 2 agents and process owners, but you can still turn on Next Experience UI if you're not using them yet. If you're using Agent Workspace, it is still supported. You're not going to lose Agent Workspace when you activate this. What you're going to notice is basically Agent Workspace opens up in a new browser tab like it did in Rome or Quebec, and it doesn't use the new styling of Next Experience UI. And I do want to mention, you don't have to turn on Next Experience UI right when you upgrade to San Diego. It does not come automatically if you're an existing customer, which I'll get to in a moment, unless your upgrade plan has allowed for this. Prior to activation, we encourage customers to review product documentation for activation, and I'll cover some of that in this session, and that you should also build in time for testing and remediating any kind of UI customizations. So we do have a few things that aren't yet supported in Next Experience UI. The first one is the Connect Chat and Support feature. We just don't have that in Next Experience UI. If you are using a workspace and aren't using Agent Chat already, we do encourage you to make the switch. We do have some support documentation out there on allowing subsets of users to use UI 16 if they need the Connect Chat and Support capabilities and you want to give the rest of your users the Next Experience capabilities. That is found on our support site, and I also have a link to it in our COE frequently asked questions. The next one, guided tours, they are not supported in Next Experience UI. We do have an onboarding feature that's built into the default landing page, but users who are already heavily invested in guided tours and require this should wait to activate. And then the last one is the JavaScript console log that was found in the developer user preferences. That is not available in Next Experience UI, but users are advised to use the script debugger instead.
Ashley, and one question in chat, can you activate and later deactivate if you're not happy with it for some reason?
Yeah, it's just a system property. You can just flip it from false to true. I've definitely, if you are doing this, try it out in sub-production first. UI changes for customers can be a big change. So I don't think it's something that you would want to do in production without lots of communication and training about that. But if you're in sub-production and just want to play around with it and look at it, that's pretty easy to do with that system property.
And on the other hand, the forms and lists still look quite familiar too. It's not like we overhauled everything. It does look very familiar, but a lot prettier.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you're used to working in forms and lists in UI 16, you're really not going to see a major difference. It's just that enhanced styling that we put in there to make it look a lot better. So let's go ahead and look at what activation looks like. So if you're a new customer or you're Z-booting on San Diego, you don't really need to do anything else. The Next Experience UI is enabled by default. You'll get the default landing page that we've included, and you don't really have to do anything else except for maybe turning on your themes and modifying that landing page to your needs. If you're an existing customer, we do have some suggestions on how to activate based upon your instance customization. So if you haven't customized your instance heavily with UI scripts or DOM manipulation or hard coding things into the theme or the CSS, you can activate Next Experience and just perform your normal upgrade validation procedure. Customers who have implemented those UI customizations, like I've mentioned, UI scripts, DOM manipulation, anything in those client-side scripts, you'll need to perform testing and probably remediate those issues prior to activation or as you're activating in your sub-prods, just because you're going to see some issues with Next Experience and DOM manipulation. If you turn on the service portal, you may have already remediated these issues already, but that is something to look out for. Also, if you've heavily customized Agent Workspace, you can still continue to work in Agent Workspace, like I mentioned, but if you're planning on moving to a configurable workspace, you're going to have like a migration plan for moving your customizations over from Agent Workspace to configurable workspace. And you can use Instant Scan, or there's third-party scans out there to catch issues with DOM manipulation and UI scripts and do that best practice remediation. And we suggest doing those scans or doing some type of scanning for that prior to activation. Great, so let's go ahead and discuss some planning considerations for the Next Experience UI. So the first one I'm going to mention is just providing that time for initial testing and remediation. Like I mentioned, using those scanning tools, going through the scripts that use DOM manipulation or any kind of UI scripts. We do have some jelly tags out there and a scriptable API for usage in UI pages. So you can align your custom UI pages to that Next Experience styling. Those links are on our product documentation if you want to go a little bit deeper with that. I just did want to mention them here so attendees are aware of that. The next one is to follow your normal upgrade procedures for new functionality and products. So like I mentioned, you don't have to turn this on right away when you upgrade. A lot of customers, when they are turning on new features or new products, may or may not ship it with upgrades. That's really, based upon your procedure. I would just treat this as a new product or a new feature and follow that procedure that you normally follow when you're turning on new applications and plugins and such. Like I mentioned, you can do this when you upgrade if it allows for it, or if you want to do this after you upgrade to San Diego and follow that procedure, you can do that as well. You have that flexibility on when you choose to activate this. The next one is to pad in time for training and knowledge materials. So a user interface is a big change for users. They need some time to get used to it. So plan ahead, on training materials, communication, make sure you're getting that out to your users, you have that ready. And then also support materials as well. So after you go live with the new UI, pad in that time for your team to answer any kind of questions, have any training issues, or even any incidents relating to it. And then the last one here is to basically implement a migration project if you're using Agent Workspace to configurable workspace. like I mentioned, you don't have to change agent workspace right away when you activate this. You can still use it. But if you are looking to migrate to a configurable workspace, have a migration plan set up for that. Define what you want to do with that configurable workspace, identify the customizations you've made in agent workspace, and have that project set up to move those customizations over. And you can do this prior to activation, or you can do it after. It really depends on your procedures and your roadmap.
There's a question fitting this from Suzanne asking if agent workspace will continue to have enhancements with future upgrades, or will the enhancements only be in configurable workspace? So in that case, configurable workspace, meaning either custom spaces or the ones that are owned by our products, so service operations workspace or CSM configurable workspaces. Do you know?
So I can't speak specifically for those teams, but I know, like, for example, the ITSM team, they have exact parity with service operations workspace versus ITSM agent workspace.
Oh, that's awesome.
I would assume that their development efforts are going to go towards a new configurable workspace and not so much any more features for agent workspace. They'll still support it because it is a product that we still have out there and customers still have activated. So they will support that workspace, but I'm going to assume that most features are going to be made for configurable workspaces. But that's really something to ask your account rep and get with those product teams for specifics on, because I can't speak to their roadmaps on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move into some best practice suggestions when activating or after activating, and you're moving forward with testing and developing and planning future changes. So the first one is the automated testing framework that we mentioned. We do have some great Platform Academy sessions on ATF. They're out there. I know that they're on our past and future sessions page. So what ATF does is basically makes testing a lot faster. Testing can be really resource intensive. And basically ATF breaks down those resources that you don't have to use as many and reduces risk after you do any kind of upgrades or development changes. So ATF is supported with Next Experience UI enabled. You can test the same core UI elements such as lists and forms, and even some things within the application navigator with Next Experience UI. But as Lisa mentioned earlier, UI Builder pages aren't supported as of the San Diego release. But if you are going in and you're just testing out your basic, ITSM procedures on, Platform UI or any other kind of products on the Platform UI, you can use that with Next Experience turned on. The next one is, after you remediate your UI customizations, make sure your plans going forward don't include those UI customizations. So if you're thinking of putting some DOM manipulation into a client script, I would steer away from that and find another way to do that that is supported by best practices. The next one is to communicate UI changes early and staff accordingly. This goes for Next Experience UI. It goes really for any other products that you're launching. Also for configurable workspace UI. Like I mentioned, UI changes are a big change to the customer. So make sure that you plan those accordingly. You build in that training time, you build in knowledge material creation, and then you also pad in time for support after you activate Next Experience UI or configurable workspaces. And then the last one is if you are thinking of modifying the platform UI for some kind of process or something that you have within a product that has a configurable workspace, consider checking out that configurable workspace and seeing if it meets your needs and see if you can migrate over to it from the platform UI before deciding to make those kind of changes within the platform UI itself. I do just want to show this chart of different system properties that we have available. They're really just like 4 big ones, and there's only really one that you need. The top one here, the Glide UI Polaris experience. That's the property that basically controls if Next Experience UI is enabled or not. Glide Login Home, that is where you set your home page. So if you're an existing customer, this value is going to be whatever you had there in the past. If you're a new customer, you'll have the now nav UI home path, which is just the default path for the default landing page. The dark themes enabled system property, that's going to control when you get that out of the box dark theme. It also controls if you have theme variants. You'll need to turn this on to show those as well. So that's a big one that a lot of customers, as soon as they activate Next Experience UI, probably want to go ahead and turn this one on as well. And then the last one, the banner image URL, that just really controls when you click that logo at the top left, where you're directed to. Again, existing customer, you're gonna have your existing value. If you want to switch over to landing pages, you'll have to configure this as well. And then, so I did want to mention theming, because I know no activation discussion would be complete without theming. So you can use themes.
It's just
in the next
now
experience.
being discussed in chat, actually. So theming is, okay. Your timing is on point.
Awesome. Yeah, I did want to put it in here. So you can use themes. It is a little different. You know, instead of creating a theme, we do have a default theme for the experience. And what you do is basically create different styles for that theme, and you can override our default styles. You can even create styles for different audiences. So let's say you want to show something like a different color set, or fonts is another example they put in product docs based upon a role. You can do that all with styles. So it is actually a lot more flexible than just putting a theme on there like in the past. You can still use your company's logo and fonts and really brand it to what your company needs. And we do have some documentation found on the product docs, and I will plug our Center of Excellence site for a really great theming article on that as well. So we'll go ahead and finish this up, and then I'll just hop into a super short demo. So the Center of Excellence site, it is found on the community. We've done a lot of revamping on this since we launched it in Quebec and to San Diego. I would say this is where you should check first if you have any questions on like theming, or I have an article on creating a landing page variant. I've tried to link out to all of our various resources. So we have some on Now Learning, the developer site, product documentation, really aggregated those all into one place and tried to group them within a topic. So definitely check here, and we will be updating this frequently, you know, as we get customer feedback, as new things come out, and as we see any kind of gaps that we need to cover on any kind of guidance for like migration or you know, activation. And then finally, our product advisory council. So we have this council that basically customers can join if they want to provide feedback on current and upcoming products. Membership is limited to the director level and above. And I'll say just reach out to your account rep if you want more information on how to join. And then Lisa, let's go ahead and get the second poll out here. So after attending the session, do you feel as though you have the resources from ServiceNow to make a decision on activating the Next Experience UI?
Well, I guess it depends on when they've checked out the COE, right?
Check it out real quick and then answer the poll.
Yes, read it all. You have 5 minutes. This is awesome. There have been some discussions going on in chat about themes. Casey mentioned that Eric has created a bunch of themes. I know that a couple of people have started to recreate classic ServiceNow themes, like the Blimey theme and Flamingo and all of those fun things. And Eric even made an instance in Comic Sans work. So
that's awesome. You should share that.
It's a lot of fun. Awesome. Yeah, themes are a lot of fun. One thing though that I noticed is when you have Next Experience activated and the unified navigation, the theme that you have will also apply to the workspaces that are opened up from there. So there's no more for now, no more individual workspace theming. So the wrapper will apply to the workspace as well.
Yeah, that's right. Right now in San Diego, it does basically think of Next Experience UI, think of that as your parent, and you have your parent, and your workspace is basically the child underneath that, and it's all wrapped. So it inherits the parent theme from Next Experience UI. That was a really good call out. I did not mention that here, but we do get a lot of questions on that one.
Yeah, I think we got most of the answers, a similar number as the first poll. So I'll go ahead and share the results. It looks like your session was very helpful.
Awesome.
One person did not like the info. It's not enough. They need more.
Okay. Okay.
So there will be more.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely get more out there. I know this is a really quick how to activate. We are still working on that COE. As we get feedback from customers on questions about this, we will be putting that information there.
Want to jump into your instance? We have about
Yeah.
15, 17 minutes left. So.
Yeah, let me go ahead and just share that screen. Okay, can everyone see my Chrome screen? Okay, cool. So I just upgraded this instance. It was on Rome. Now it's on San Diego. Let me go ahead and log in and save that off. Okay, cool. So the first thing that you're going to see as soon as you upgrade, you're going to see basically this layover, this popover saying, hey, you've upgraded. That's awesome. We have this whole new Next Experience UI. We give you a few pictures showing what you can do with it. And you can just click out of this if you don't want to do it right now, or you can go ahead and learn more about it, or we can go ahead and get started with it. Okay, well, that should have redirected us, but it didn't. So let's go ahead and just go into sys properties. Let's pretend that you did this later. You didn't do it as soon as you upgraded and you want to do it now. So I'm going to go into system properties. I'm just going to search for Polaris. I do want to mention Polaris was our, our code name for Next Experience UI before we named it Next Experience UI. So you will see some themes and, system properties with this name in it. So when you hear or see Polaris, just think Next Experience UI. So let's go ahead. I am going to go into this Glide UI Polaris Experience system property. And right now it's false. So we're just going to go ahead and update that to true. Okay. Let me go ahead and refresh. I might need to log out and log back in. I can see it's trying to take effect.
The list is already updated, and the nav will always update after a refresh. It's the same if you add menu points, applications to your application navigator. You have to do a page refresh for that to load.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and just click back into the logo, and we'll give everything a second to refresh. So you can see it's enabled. I do get this initial kind of onboarding pop-up. This will go away the first time like a user goes through it. But basically it just shows some different things on what you can do as far as pinning or unpinning, how to get around. Really, it just discusses the application navigator menus at the top. So that'll show up. And so I was an existing customer, right? So as an existing customer, I don't get the default landing page by default. I do have the dashboards that, I had configured previously. So, as a user, and this is on, I'm not going to have that much changes, right? I don't have that much to really get accustomed to, outside of learning about the application navigator menus, maybe going into workspaces if I'm using those. But I don't have to learn a whole brand new landing page experience as soon as I turn this on. And we did that because we want to give admins a chance to go into landing pages, research them, learn UI Builder, and really design what they think that their users need. And we don't want to make them to have to wait to roll out Next Experience UI to do this. So we just give you that flexibility to give time to your users to keep using their dashboards and home pages while you go in the back end and start, creating and configuring your landing pages.
We do recommend dashboards over home pages, though.
That's true. So if I go into my preferences, I don't see themes. Okay, so that's another question that we get. So let's go back into our system properties. And here is the dark themes enabled property that we have. Let's go ahead and flip that from false to true. And then I'm just going to do another refresh. And let me go back to my home page here. Great. So as soon as I did that, now I have my theme picker. I do have that out of the box dark theme that we have available. Once you begin creating variants of themes, they'll show up here as well. But it was really just as simple as turning on that system property. Like I mentioned, core UI elements like this dashboard, any kind of core UI forms and lists won't inherit the dark mode, but if you do pop into a workspace or landing page, you will see that dark theme take effect. And really all we had to do is just turn on that system property.
Oh, that's so pretty. And it's dark. Look at it. One more reason to start using configurable workspaces.
I know. And teams have done a really great job of redesigning their landing pages in configurable workspaces. Just take advantage of Next Experience UI and the styling, but also dark themes as well. So let's go ahead and I'll just show a few more things. I do want to leave some time for questions. I want to go back into system properties and show you, let's say that you're in a subprod instance and you want to see how this looks with the default landing page. You can go to glide.login.home. And as you can see, the value is whatever I had there as an existing user. Let me make sure I remember the correct path. I think it's now nav UI home. I think I've done this enough times to know this off the top of my head. So if I update that, and I'm also going to change the banner logo as well, because I wanted you to be able to click that, or the banner image URL. So my banner image URL is home.do. Let's go ahead and change that over as well. Cool. Okay, so those are basically, we just changed the 4 properties I showed on that slide. And we'll click this and hopefully it'll refresh. Now let me go ahead and just refresh this entire thing. Now, okay, I'm going to log out and log back in. So I have seen sometimes there is a user preference that gets stuck in there for the home page, but let me just try logging out and logging back in. Okay, perfect. So it looks like I just had to log out and log back in for that change to take effect. Cool. So here's my landing page. I'm logged in as admin, so I'm getting the admin variant of this. There's some admin specific things. You can see that it takes advantage of that nice dark theme. I have an onboarding panel here where I can go through that same one that kind of popped up the first time that you logged in. I can go through and learn more about the different application navigator menus. If I'm done with that, I can close it and not see it anymore. There is a user preference to control if you want users to see that again. So if someone accidentally clicks out of it and they need it back for whatever reason, you can set that user preference. But yeah, that's basically what you see when you look at the default landing page. ITIL users or other role users that aren't admin are going to have different things. I think we do more of a deep dive on each of these in like a creator toolbox session. I did want to show one more thing and then we'll leave it open for questions. If you're an admin and you want to know more about this, the default landing page, you want to start exploring it, you can go into UI Builder. And it will show in your list of experiences, it's the unified navigation app. And here's the admin enrolled one, and then here's like the default one. For the rest of the users, these are locked down just because we have to have something to show you. We can't have these deleted or like modified to where they don't work. We have to have something to show you, when you log in. But you can go in and you can duplicate these and create your own variants in your own scope. So if you want to use these as a nice template, you can. Let's say that you just want to create a variant that's not based upon one of these. You can make a whole blank page and have the home URL set to that variant. You can even create your own pages here too. So, when you're setting the default landing pages, you're going to have to set it to this now nav UI path, but this home path can be anything. It can be a home variant. You can create a page and you can set that as Ashley's home. whatever you want to do, you can do that here within the Unified Navigation app in UI Builder. And so I do mention we do have a create landing pages COE article where I basically create a manager persona landing page, and I base it off this variant right here. But we will have documentation too on like landing page variants and all the things that you can do with them coming up shortly. So that's all I got for the demo, really just that basic activation procedure. And if you're in an admin, going a little bit deeper and looking at what you can do. I'll go ahead and open up if you have any more questions.
Yeah, that was super helpful. The demo showed all the important parts to look at when you get started. So thank you so much for that presentation. Let's check if there are any more questions. I don't think there are more questions coming in. That's awesome. So Arsh asks, in order to create a new theme, we need to make a new variant from UI Builder.
You don't. So I can go ahead and share again real quick. If you want to make a new theme, let me move this over. Okay, if you want to go in and make a new variant of a theme, you could go into themes here under Now Experience Framework. We need to update that from Now Experience Framework. Again, if you're used to seeing Now Experience Framework, it's called Next Experience Framework. And the theme that we use is called Polaris. Again, that theming scheme, think Next Experience. Here's the theme. And what you would do is create a style. So we have our default color style. You would create your own style and associate it to this theme. And if you want your style to be like default style and overrides this, you would basically set it as core and give it higher order. If you want to set it as a variant, you could just set it as a variant, and that's what allows those customers to go back and forth and choose.
I think we need a whole session on theme making. Will there be knowledge CreatorCon sessions on UI Builder or Next Experience theming? Do you know?
I know that Brad Tilton's creating one on how to create an experience with UI Builder. I don't know if we have any for theming yet. We might, though. I know that we're still in discussions of what we're showing, so keep on the lookout. I do have an article on our COE about all of the sessions pertaining to Next Experience, and I'll be updating that as more are announced.
Awesome. Next question is Chris Hemming asking, you'd mentioned some users being on Next Experience and some being on UI 16.
Yeah, that's going to be a support documentation article. So if you want, reach out, you can create a case, or you could go to the support site. I do have a link to the support site down here in our FAQ, but really that's really meant for those specific use cases where you need to use like Connect Chat and Connect Support. That's really what we've put that functionality out for.
Yeah, I can see there are a lot of upvotes for a theme session, so I guess we have to put that in our backlog. While we're talking through some questions, I'll launch the Academy feedback poll, so please give us your feedback on this session. I thank you so much, Ashley. That was an amazing session. I think it's super helpful to have this initial knowledge on how to get started, how to build up your migration path, what to consider, which things work already, which work not yet. So the feedback poll is running. I want to, again, point you all to knowledge, even if you cannot join us in person, which would be a pity because it will be awesome. We get to meet in person again. That's awesome. There's still digital knowledge. So all of the CreatorCon content will be out there. We're recording as we speak. So this week, next week, we're doing our best to bring our content to you in a digital form. You will be able, just like in the last years, to do the labs. I think through Now Learning, that will be spinning up instances for you to follow the lab guides, check out the presentations and the videos that we're recording. There are many interesting sessions in there, so be sure to check out the agenda and register for knowledge. One organizational note for the upcoming weeks, since it's knowledge season and there's so much to do and so much to prepare, this Academy will take a break until after knowledge, because our regular turns would just be the exact weeks when knowledge happens, which would be rather uncomfortable for us to do from Den Haag or from New York or Las Vegas. So we'll be taking a break. The next Academy session will be on June 9th. And we'll dive back into Flow Designer. So we have a couple of nice topics prepared in our backlog about Flow Designer migration use cases, and some more about debugging and recommendations for that. So that's, I think, all that I had. Any more callouts, shoutouts, anything? I don't think so. All right. For those who aren't on the SNDevs Slack yet, there's sndevs.com. There's a Slack community out there with a bunch of channels around knowledge too, with dedicated channels for each of the locations. So if you want to meet up with other developers at Knowledge, be sure to check out those channels too. And with that, thank you everybody for joining. This was an amazing session. Thank you for all your questions. I hope you have all of the resources now to get into next experience, landing pages, configurable workspaces, and start planning out your journey towards that. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ashley.